Good to see you again. Hello, Mark to the Max. It's good to see you. Um, Sorry about that little bit of a wait. I was trying to get my camera all set up. I'm still learning about this whole live stream thing. Um, Thanks to everyone who showed up for our midweek live stream last week, where I did some animation on a future project. But this week, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to draw some comic book stuff. So while I'm waiting for people to show up in the chat, I just want to show you guys that are here right now what I've been working on. So this is an original comic book character that I came up with named Ravencroft, and he's sort of a paranormal detective. Think of sort of a mix between hey, Gasper. Yes, I do remember you. You were in the live stream during the fan film. You made a cool review of it too. I really appreciated that. Good seeing you again, buddy. And yeah, these comic book pages are kind of difficult to make. It takes me a long time because they're pretty detailed, as you can see. And what I've been trying to do is see if I can kind of get the feeling of the classic 1930s Universal monster movies with this. Actually, this character Ravencroft right here, I kind of based his design on what's his name, Vincent Price. And the police detective here, I based him off of Boris Karloff, as you can probably see right here. There's kind of a likeness of him there. But yeah, this kind of artwork right here, just these really strong shadows and really strong shapes are really what I like in comic books. Hey, Jacob Stoffer, good to see you again, buddy. And thank you very much. I've been drawing for like ever since I was like 4 years old, so I've had a lot of time to practice. So I always tell people that they need to stick with it if they want to draw, because when I first started drawing, I couldn't draw anything. Because what you're doing is essentially, it's kind of like learning to write your name. When you're a kid, you don't have any control over your pencil when you're trying to learn how to write your letters and numbers. And it's the same with drawing. You got to get like the motor control in your hands and in your wrist to be able to do it properly. Um, so just keep at it. If you'd like to draw, just keep trying, and eventually you'll get there. But this is Ravencroft Manor. It's kind of like how I would imagine um, Wayne Manor to be if I ever drew a Batman comic. This panel was really fun. Um, just drawing the little Bobby and oh, who's my inspiration? Mark to the Max just asked. My main source of inspiration for comic book art is John Buscema. He was a comic book artist in the 1960s who worked for Marvel. Um, he's uh, he's my main source of inspiration when it comes to comic book art. So this page right here, I hope you can see the pencils. Let's put these to the side here. These finished pages. Let me hold this up to the camera. This is the panel I'm going to be inking today, because if I tried to do this whole page, we'd be here all night. So, but yeah, as you can see, I sketch very, very lightly, and then I lay down my borders, and then I write in my dialogue and do the balloons next. So, right here, what I was talking about with making mistakes and everything, having to practice to get it right. It's been a while since I've drawn dialogue balloons, and I kind of screwed this one up. So don't feel bad if that happens when you're trying to draw your own comics. But the good thing is there's a lot of heavy shadow right here and right over here, so you're not even going to see it. And to anyone who sees the finished product, if they haven't watched this video, they'll think I just drew it perfect. But that's the thing. When you're inking comics, you can hide a lot of crimes with your black. Now, if you want to get some good markers for inking with, these are excellent. My mom and dad actually they got these for me for Christmas. It was a 12-pack, and these are the perfect brushes for doing comic art, because on one side you have a nice fine tip. See how tiny that is? And then on the other side, you have a nice brush tip, and that's good for filling in all the dark areas. So I think I've rambled on enough, and I will start laying down some of this line work here. Now, to go deeper with your question about my influences, how I started doing comic book art, I hope you can see what I'm doing here. Let me try to, oops, sorry, bump my tripod. It's kind of tricky drawing with the tripod because it's kind of in the way. I hope my hand won't obscure what I'm doing too much. But when I was a little kid, my dad was a cabinet maker, and he was doing a job for a guy who owned a comic book store, and you know, he was a private contractor, so you would kind of you'd bid on what your job was going to be, so that way your client wouldn't ask you to do more work than he was going to pay for, you know. So he had already set all that he was going to do for the guy. But while he was there, the guy liked what my dad was doing so much. He was like, "Oh man, if you could just, is there some way we could kind of just barter and come to a deal so you could make like a cool display case for me?" And my dad thought about it, and he knew I liked to draw. And the guy had this videotape, because I was back when video cassettes were a thing. That's how old I am. And it was a videotape made by Stan Lee and John Buscema called How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. There's also a book by the same title, and it covers all the same information, but the guy was selling the videotape at the store, and it was really expensive. It was an expensive videotape. And so my dad was like, "Well, here, what about this? I can do that extra bit of work for you, and instead of paying cash, he was like, what if you just kind of trade? I'll do the work, and then you give me the videotape." And the guy did, and I watched that video like hundreds and hundreds of times. Especially once I got a TV in my room when I was a little bit older. Because then I didn't have to worry about whether anyone else wanted to watch TV or play video games. So then I could just watch it and practice over and over and over again. And that's how I learned how to draw. And I learned everything I knew about building characters and comic book design, how to do panels, and all that kind of stuff. Inking. So it really, that videotape and like just, you know, trial and error, that was pretty much my art school. So that's another reason why I say that anybody can learn how to draw, because I didn't go to some big art school. So yeah, Jacob, I remember that. I remember we were talking. I believe we were talking. He said that he remembered me telling him about that videotape years ago, but he couldn't remember how it came up. I think if I remember right, we were talking about the Star Wars Day cartoon that I drew, that I made for the channel years back, and you were asking me how I learned how to draw, and I told you that I didn't actually start out with animation. I started doing comics, and I think that's how I told you about it, if I remember correctly. So, sorry for doing kind of like this boring little part. I'm just trying to get this out of the way relatively quickly so I can move on to the cooler stuff. So, I'll start inking the characters in just a little bit. So, but Jacob Stoffer said, I think you might be right. It was either that or when we were talking Spider-Man. You know, I talked to you a little bit more about it when we were talking about your Spider-Man project that you were working on. And so, yeah, we talked a lot about all that kind of stuff. So, here, what I'm doing here is it's kind of a nice little trick that you can do if you want to make something look detailed in a hurry, and you don't want to do a lot of work to get that detail. If you notice, I'm making all the grout in between the stones. I'm making it black. And what that does is it accomplishes two things. One, it gives kind of a depth to the drawing because it makes the big stones kind of pop out, because they're just kind of this big stark white shape coming out of the black of the grout. And two, what it does is it gives you the feeling of depth and darkness and shadow. So it tricks the eye to make it look more detailed than it really is. And so, not to spoil the illusion that I draw really good, but um, a lot of times drawing comes down to a lot of little cheats, simple things that when you combine it all together in a drawing, it makes it look uh, something like this, where then it looks more impressive than really the work that I put in. Because if you'll notice here, this is a very simple composition. It's a um, completely blacked out hillside, two characters in silhouette, and then the trees kind of frame them on either side, leaving a lot of nice room for the dialogue balloon up here. When you see the finished picture, it seems like it's really detailed, but it actually isn't when you break it down to its simple shapes. And that's what comic book art is all about. It's finding those shapes, finding the ways to break down a subject to where it's easier to draw so you can do it quickly. So enough of these bricks. They're kind of boring. I think I'm going to draw Ravencroft now because he's the main character of the book. So again, let me hold this up so you can hopefully see it better. Jacob Stoffer just said, I have a lot of pencil and paper drawings. The recent ones aren't bad, but the ones I drew in high school are horrendous. Well, if you look back at a lot of my old artwork, it's not good. Um, it may have been the coolest stuff to me that I had drawn up to that point, but it's natural to look at your old stuff and kind of be like, ooh, I can't believe I thought that was cool. Um, but it's all about growing and learning your proportions better and all that jazz. I think I think really when it gets down to it, one of the trickiest things to learn about comic book art um, is probably perspective. The way to kind of give depth and realism to your drawing so everything doesn't look kind of strangely flat. Um, Now, me, I had the advantage of I also had a computer animation software when I was a teenager, and I did a lot of computer animation when I was young. And that kind of building things in 3D and being able to rotate a camera around them 360 degrees, that kind of trained me to understand three dimensionality and how to get the volumes of something to look more real as I was drawing it, and also how to draw interesting camera angles. Because unfortunately, that's something they rarely cover in books on art and drawing. Kind of like how right here it made me think of it because I'm drawing the wrinkles in his cape. A lot of times they don't teach you about cloth and how to give it weight and how to make it wrinkle and all that kind of stuff. Um, Also, they usually don't teach you how to draw hair as well. Um, even that Marvel video, as good as it was for teaching, um, basically all they said about hair is kind of like, make sure to give your hero a good head of hair, and it's like, okay, thanks, Stan, but how do you do that? And unfortunately, they they didn't really explain it. So um, hair is kind of like one of those things, sort of like cloth, in the fact that it it's kind of it's supple. It moves. There's no one standard way to uh, to draw it because it's a moving thing. So it's kind of like water. It flows and it's affected by wind and gravity and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of hard to learn how to do. So I had to just kind of figure that out with a lot of trial and error. So, okay, so you'll see right here how he takes shape in a second, because Ravencroft is fun to draw because the way I've designed him, a lot of times he's kind of back or side lit, and then you have just these big black areas where his silhouette is just kind of ominously looming there, kind of like Dracula in a way. Like I said, in personality, he sort of has a mix between Sherlock Holmes and Dracula, where he's the smartest guy in the room, but he's also kind of a spooky guy. Um, I honestly haven't decided everything about him yet, because for a while I was toying around with the idea that like maybe he's a monster too. Because I'm just making this up as I go. I was kind of bored one day. I was well, not bored, but more burnout, I guess I should say. I was still in the middle of editing all the lightsabers and visual effects for our fan film Fallen Jedi, and I just I felt like I can't look at another lightsaber right now. My eyes were hurting and from staring at the screen, and I was just like, I don't want to see another lightsaber. So I just sat down, and on a whim, I started drawing, and that's when uh, this page happened. And I just drew this first page, and I had no plan. I just drew it panel by panel, just drawing images that I thought looked cool. And here you can see, um, you can see that in the shadows here, I kind of framed him almost like abstract in sort of like a mild coffin shape. If you see, and that mixed with his long cape and the side lighting, it just gives him a very kind of spooky Dracula feel. But then I just decided to make him a private detective instead as the page went on. So a lot of times ideas will just kind of come to me and morph that way to where I'll just kind of just start going with something, and eventually I'll figure out what it's supposed to be. And maybe it's not the best way to tell stories, but it kind of works for me sometimes. So let me see here. And like I said last time on my other live stream, if I'm missing your questions or comments that you're leaving, I'm not actively ignoring you guys. I have my tablet off to the side, and I can't see every time something pops up. It's like I'll see like a little bit of something blip up onto the screen for a second, and but then unfortunately a lot of times by the time I can look over from my paper to the screen, I kind of miss it. So I'm trying to get better at kind of having my head on a swivel so I can keep drawing but also answer you guys' questions. So if I'm not answering you back, don't feel bad. I'm not trying to ignore you. I didn't quite catch what you said. Anybody out there watching, if you know, is there any way to make the questions stay on these live streams for YouTube? Um, because I'm not very good at this. I typically do long form weekly videos. I'm new to this whole live stream thing. And I was wondering if there's a way to make sure the comments stay up, like the chat window, so I can kind of come back to questions and answer them easier. If you know that, let me know, and hopefully I'll see when you let me know, I guess. It's kind of goofy. I can't read questions. Leave a question to let me know if there's a way to make comments stay up. But anyway, this is why I love these little tiny ink things. Oh, hello, Cassandra Welch. Hello, quick question. What are you drawing? Also, can you try text to speech? That works good. What I'm drawing, to answer your first question, is it's a comic book character that I came up with um, over a year ago, actually. I got tracked and never finished it. He's kind of a supernatural detective guy. He's sort of, personality-wise, he's sort of like a mix between Sherlock Holmes, but he has like a little bit of a spooky edge to him, just because I like drawing guys in capes. I wanted to make a comic book story that had the vibe of like an old 1930s Universal monster movie, which is why I have all the gnarly trees and the long cape and heavy shadows. I based his look off of Vincent Price, and the chief inspector here, he was based off of Boris Karloff. You might be able to see a bit of a likeness there. Um, so, but yeah, he's like a rich English lord named Ravencroft who uses his intellect and knowledge of monsters to help the police solve crimes and murders when there's kind of an otherworldly um, vibe to the situation. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm inking this panel on this page to kind of continue the story a bit. So I like old school movies and old comics and everything because a lot of times in newer stuff they go for such shock value. I feel like they go too far in a lot of places, and you can still tell a story with kind of a fun, spooky, and even kind of ominous atmosphere without going as far as a lot of movies do now these days. I know I might sound like kind of curmudgeon-y, but I just don't like um, when movies get too twisted and violent. Um, because I don't really think you need to see that kind of stuff necessarily. Um, but I do still like some kind of larger than life aspects of old monster movies. Greetings, Genoas. Good to see you again. But yeah, I agree with you that more things need to be kind of PG-13. That was the one thing I was a bit disappointed with Rebel Moon was it wasn't quite as PG-13 as I was hoping for. I'm hoping that part two will be a bit more just on the action side and have less of the kind of questionable stuff that the first one had. It wasn't a horrible movie. There were just a couple things that I felt he went a bit too far on for trying to make it family friendly. So, but yeah, I like I don't I'm not of the opinion that like everything has to be like a kids movie. Um, but I do miss people being able to tell a story without having to have a whole ton of language and really graphic violence and stuff in it because you can still be dramatic and exciting. It doesn't have to be disturbing. But the world has kind of become a very harsh place. Let's see, Cassandra Welch. Honestly, same. Even though I couldn't see it, I could hear. Oh yeah, you could hear the movie, and it was a little bit kind of rough. Yeah, it was. He was. I think Zack Snyder. He was trying a little too hard to make sure this was like his hardcore version of Star Wars. So there was a bit more in it than I would have cared for personally. So um, so for my projects, I'm always trying to endeavor to kind of strike that balance of like, yeah, there can still be action, there can still be thrills and even some chills, but it doesn't have to be quite as heavy and hardcore as other filmmakers do things these days. Because what I'm hoping that we can create with the films and even like this comic that I'm working on right here and the animation projects that we're trying to do. Um, I'm hoping that we can get kind of a uh, make people feel nostalgic, even though they've never seen what we've done before. Even though it's not like an established franchise or character, I want to see if we can give people the feeling of the kind of stuff they watched when they were younger. The feeling of old Steven Spielberg movies, the feeling of old monster movies, the feeling of classic Star Wars, even. Um, but yeah, Janelle was just said that she was surprised when she watched Rambo because it didn't seem that bad compared to what they do these days. Um, I I've I've seen the old Rambo movies, and I agree they were. I was really shocked because I was expecting it to be a lot more heavy than it was. It may sound funny, but in a way, some of the stuff in the Bourne film, the very first Bourne Identity, some of that felt more violent to me than uh, First Blood Part Two. That's the one where he's in the jungle. Uh, Rambo's in the jungle trying to find the camp with the uh, Vietnam POWs, and I think for me, the reason some of the stuff in Bourne felt worse was because it was from a different era. It was they had to top all the movies from before, and the ratings board had changed so much that like a PG-13 movie had to uh, kind of top what was going on in other movies, and it was pretty rough in some of the cases. I still enjoyed the films, but I was just kind of surprised when I saw the old Rambo movie because I was like, huh, this doesn't really seem that violent comparatively. Because there's kind of a cartooniness to it, I guess I'd say. That Bourne felt more real, so it felt more violent to me. Um, Someone's comment just popped up. I only caught the tail end of it where they were saying something about the Mandalorian, but I don't know what they were saying about it. So I'm sorry I missed. Sorry I missed that comment. But I have seen the news that they're gonna do a Mandalorian movie. Um, Now I didn't really care for this last season too much. Oh, the comment popped back up. Uh, oh, you got a puzzle of Grogu and Mando. Yeah. Um, those two characters are pretty cool. I like them. My problem with this last season of The Mandalorian was it seemed like it didn't focus on those two enough. It focused on kind of everyone but Mando and Grogu. So I think that was the reason I didn't really care for this last season. I loved season 1 and 2, um, and I just heard that everyone's talking about it on the old interwebs that Jon Favreau is going to be doing a movie of Mando. Um, right now, I hope it's just like a tentative title, like a working title, and they'll come up with a better one later. Um, because right now, at this point, it's just called The Mandalorian and Grogu, and I feel like that's kind of a goofy title. But I guess maybe they just want everyone to definitely know, like, hey, it's about them. Come watch it. You like them, right? Um, yeah, Mando and Grogu's Excellent Adventure. That would, um, hey, bring Keanu Reeves into it, and as a goofy Mandalorian, and I think we got an Oscar winner there. That could be pretty cool. So let's see here. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing here with one of these stone sections. Yeah, there we go. There's a kind of an arch that comes down that I'm trying to take account for, and some extra shadow here because he's got a candle that's lighting this passageway. All right. So here we go with the marker again. But yeah, I think I saw someone was saying that that Rambo almost seemed like it could have been PG-13 if it hadn't been for some of the language. And I agree. It's like comparatively to like what they've got now, it it really wasn't that bad. So I still wouldn't let like a little kid watch it, but um, not that I have kids, but if my little nephew didn't was around and wanted to watch it, I wouldn't sit him down to watch Rambo by any means. But it's certainly not as bad as some of the movies are. Oh, greetings, Adela Finsonen. She said she's playing a Ninja Turtle game. Which TMNT game are you playing? I always played Hyperstone Heist on the Sega Genesis. That was my favorite Ninja Turtle game. We didn't have it for years. All we could find was Tournament Fighters, and that game was frustratingly hard. But it was the only Ninja Turtle game we had for a while, and that's just how it was when I was back in my day, as old geezers always say. Sometimes you played a game not because you enjoyed it, but because it was like the only thing you had. Oh, Shredder's Revenge. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really fun game. I played a little bit of that with my brother, and that's a great little game. They brought back a great feel of the old Turtles with that one. It's very classic. I liked it a lot. So yeah, Janelle was just said that like the King's Speech would have been PG if it wasn't for all the f bombs. That's I never saw that movie because I heard of all the language that was in it, and I just kind of thought like, is that really necessary? It's like we've got like a stuffy drama about a king that stutters, so naturally we had to like uh to make people want to watch it, we had to lace it with you know as much profanity as a Die Hard movie or something. It's like, come on, he's not John McClane. He doesn't need to talk like that. I've only seen the TV edit of the old Die Hard movies for the very reason of all the language. But it's always funny when you see the TV version because you can tell how much it's like. Okay, he's not really saying that, is he? Um, and the voice suddenly changes and morphs, and he's saying stupid nonsense. But yeah, it was. That's the way I've seen a lot of different action movies. I've seen the TV versions. There are rare exceptions that I've seen, like the actual movie. Um, the let me see which film was it? It was a Tom Cruise movie. I don't know why my name is blanking on it. I guess I'm too tired. Um, Last Samurai. That's the movie. That's a good movie. I really like that one. I haven't reviewed it on the channel because it's like I have the whole like this is a family channel after all kind of thing when I'm reviewing movies. So I feel like I can't, in good conscience, recommend certain films. That was my dilemma with Rebel Moon because I was like, I don't know if I can recommend this one because it's not to try to make it sound like it's worse than it is, but it definitely had some unsavory stuff that I could not recommend, and particularly since I'm always talking about how it's a family channel and all that kind of thing. So I don't know if anybody cares about my opinions on movies, and I certainly don't know if anyone takes my recommendations to heart of like, okay, if he says it's okay, we can watch it with the kids and all that kind of thing. And I'd really hate to say like, oh yeah, I liked Rebel Moon, it was cool, and then have someone sit there with their 6 or 8 year old and be like, what the crap, that Vader Reviews guy, he always says that he's a family channel and he said it was good, but like all this stuff is in it. you know I didn't want to freak anybody out. So I know some people kind of make fun of that, kind of like the Simpsons, well, someone think of the children thing, but I feel like someone has to, because movie makers sure aren't. That's for sure. But anyway, let's get this. Kind of messed up that archway. It looks pretty crappy. Hopefully the screen isn't getting all pixelized. I hope it's good enough resolution for you guys to see what I'm doing, because it does that sometimes. I don't have the best internet connection, so I hope it's staying nice and clean. So let's see. We've been going for about 35 minutes here, and I don't even have this panel like half done. I'm rushing through parts of it too. I should have been taking my time on those bricks. They look kind of crappy, but that's the thing with comic book art, though. Every once in a while, it's kind of like, technically, like, it could look better, but sometimes you got to decide, like, okay, do you want it to be perfect or do you want it to be done? And sometimes when you see the whole picture as a whole, if you can just get it completely inked, it's like, well, maybe all the bricks aren't perfect, but at least it's finished. Finishing projects has always been difficult, because I'm very picky about the stuff I do. I've been trying to kind of let go of that attitude and find a good balance between, like, well, yeah, I can be picky about how it looks, but I also need to get it done as well. And can't be a perfectionist about things, because there are some things that you just gotta kind of understand, like, maybe it's beyond your skill level, or maybe it would just take too long to do and you'd burn yourself out. So I've been learning more in recent years that sometimes it's good to um, just go with it, and just finish something, even if it's not looking exactly how you were hoping it was going to look. Don't abandon it, and complete it, because when you have something in your hand that you've completed, there's no feeling in the world quite like that. So yeah, Janelle Waz said that about it's striking a balance between something that's really good and there's like, okay, just post it. Um, I'll admit I've had dilemmas like that with the channel, where something's going on in my life that has me kind of depressed, or I'm sick, I'm not feeling good, or um, or the simple fact of, like, there's just nothing good to talk about in movie news. Um, that happens a lot, and so then sometimes you're like, this isn't. I'm not trying to make a crappy video this week, but I just couldn't think of jokes this time because I'm kind of feeling down and depressed a bit, or a movie just didn't lend itself to really making fun of it. Every once in a while, for me, if I really really like a movie, um, those are some of the hardest reviews I have to write when I'm reviewing movies, because for me the humor comes from making fun of something that I think is kind of goofy in a movie. Um, so that's how I get my humor, is kind of making jokes, kind of describing something in kind of the dumbest way possible, um, poking fun at the movie a little bit. And if a movie's too good, then it's like, oh crap, like, how am I going to make fun of that, Um, Godzilla, for example, this new one, that was a difficult review to make. And I felt like, oh man, this is not going to be entertaining, because I can't really think of a way to make jokes about this movie, because for one, it was dramatic and it had some pretty heavy themes and moments in it, and it was just so well made. and it made it hard to review because you can't just get on a video and be kind of like, "This is Vader Reviews. We are honored that you would join us." Well, this movie was it was pretty wizard, and that's all I got to say. It looks good, and the story is great. It's like that's not going to be an entertaining video. So that balance of being informative and comical is sometimes it's kind of a tough nut to crack because it's it's kind of hard to do. Yeah, Jacob Stoffer just said like it's weird hearing my Vader voice unedited. Yeah, I have to pitch my voice down a bit because I'm naturally a tenor, an Irish tenor. So my voice just it doesn't really go that low, unfortunately. Um, I wish it could because it sounds cooler that way, but I have to just sort of make do. Um, Palpatine, he was unedited. I was able to kind of do him for the fan film without having to put any processing on myself because I just listened to a lot of Ian McDiarmid interviews, and I've been watching those movies since I was I, I don't know, like 11, 10, something like that. So got a lot of years of listening to them to kind of build up my ear for it. When it comes to doing voices or accents for that matter, what I tend to do is if I mean, not that this is an accent or voice tutorial, but for anyone interested who wants to do voices um, for fun or profit, what you can do is you listen to. I listen to interviews of whoever I'm trying to figure out how to do the voice of, or even if it's just an accent. You listen to lots of interviews from people from the area that you're trying to figure out the accent of. And then what I'll do is I'll try to figure out the rhythms of their speech, how they pronounce things, and kind of the music of the accent. Might sound funny putting it that way, but um, I'm a musician, and I was doing that for years. So I always think of things in terms of tune and melody when I'm looking at an accent. And it won't be perfect, but you'll kind of get yourself in a ballpark with that, and it helps you with your performance if you can listen to kind of the music of how a line is written. As an example, you could try to sound like, say, the knight from Indiana Jones. He chose poorly, that guy, the old Templar. And it might seem like, okay, so you just got to sound like an old British guy. But just sounding like an old British guy isn't quite enough, because he had a very specific way that he spoke his lines. And that's what I call the music of the line. Because when he said he chose poorly, it's not just he chose poorly. It's not just British. You can say the line British, but you have to think of his timing and the tune. How it was like, he chose poorly. There's kind of a da 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 kind of tune to it. So if you can hear that tune and find that timing, it's a lot easier to do impressions and um, try to find little bits that stick out about people. Like I've noticed, like with Patrick Stewart, because I grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation all the time. Um, there are certain things that he says that have like a very biting rhythm, but then other times when he'll have a very slow kind of rhythm, and his S's, he's sort of, um, let me see, I'm trying to think of a line. I'm probably going to embarrass myself here and do a really crappy thing of it, but I'll just quote a line from a short that I was working on a little bit ago. I need to finish it. It's kind of a what if story of what if an officer like Picard was in the Empire. So it's Star Wars, but it's Patrick Stewart as a what do you call it? Star Destroyer captain. And I had a line at the end of that where he's basically trying to explain to to a young officer who's having a problem with their more vicious imperial tactics. He's trying to explain to them why they do the things they do, and so he's just kind of chewed him out for not being a good little imperial officer, and then he gets into the quiet kind of fatherly Picard, trying to kind of teach the guy a lesson and help him understand. So when he gets to that, he quiets down and he's like, "Our actions, no matter how harsh or brutal they may appear on the surface, are necessary and absolutely vital for preserving the peace." Now when that wasn't a great impression, but if you notice how he said peace, I didn't just say peace, it's peace. There's like a heavy emphasis on the S there. And when you listen to somebody for a long time, you can kind of start picking up their rhythms, and that's how I learn different accents, because 9 times out of 10 I can't really do a good impression of the dude himself and have it sound like him. But what I can kind of do is I can kind of put their voice on top of my voice, and that's how I can learn an accent. And it comes in handy for things, especially like for playing characters like Faust, because he had to be very precise and very British. So he would sound like an imperial officer. And the way I did him was to take little bits and pieces of Picard's thoughtfulness, and but then I mixed it with other things to make him sound a bit more despicable, and it's quite good fun to do a voice of a villain like that. So, but then you got other villains that you can be a lot more broad with, and that's also quite good fun as well. But yeah, Janelle Waz just said that like doing Odo's voice really tears up the throat. It does. I used to goof around doing Odo's voice when I was a teenager. I can't do it anymore. But I used to goof around with that because me and my brothers, we made like kind of like our own little custom Lego guys once, where I drew on paper. I drew like a little Starfleet uniform, shirt, and like a new face where I drew like a little Picard face, colored it with markers, and then we taped those to our existing Lego guys, and then I had like a little Lego Captain Picard, and we'd goof around playing stuff. So just playing goofy stuff like that, and playing with our Star Wars figures. That's kind of how me and my brothers kind of practiced our storytelling, because we didn't um, we didn't just kind of bash our toys into each other as other kids we knew did. That kind of was always like, oh, you're gonna break it. Be careful with that. You know, your mom and dad paid good money for that. Don't break it. You know, we were always very careful with our toys, and we always liked to play like an interlinking story, and we would kind of remember what was going on, and um, so when we would come back to it the next morning, we would pick up right where the story had left off, and we had like story arcs that we would do, and um, you know, it's not anything amazing. Most kids play that way, I think, but we always tried to have some kind of story going on with what we were playing, and that's what made doing the fan film feel kind of funny in a way to me, was because it was like it felt very much like when we were playing as kids, except now I was just dressed like Darth Vader, and we were doing it for real, and so that was a lot of fun. Very tiring I never really talked much about all that side of it because you know I was kind of sort of keeping it hidden who I was to a certain degree. I feel like, in a way, I feel like it was kind of like Aunt May in Sam Raimi Spider-Man. It's like everyone else knows, you know. I think people probably could guess that I was the Vader guy, but just in case anyone hadn't figured it out yet, I didn't want to spoil the illusion because I had held polls several times of like, should I unmask? And lots of people were like, no, don't do it. Only unmask if that's like your last video when you quit the channel. Because some people like the mystery. You know, as Bane said, no one cared who I was until I put on the mask. So, and it's kind of true sometimes. Sometimes a mask makes you kind of cooler to people because you're mysterious or whatever. I read that some YouTubers that are mainly masked when they finally take off the mask, their subscribers go down because all the girls that watch them are disappointed because they imagine them as more handsome than they are. So then when they see their face, they're like, "Oh crap, he's just a dweeb," and then they will unsubscribe. So um, hopefully that won't happen with my channel, but we'll see. I doubt anyone was really imagining like, you know, Brad Pitt under my Darth Vader mask. But you never know, I guess. But yeah, I do wish I could do the Vader voice better in person. Although it does come in handy that I don't sound totally like him because, like, for that 1 year when I went to the Christmas lights in the Vader suit, um, most of the kids just loved it. They came right up to me right off the bat, and it's funny because if you're in a Vader costume, you'd think kids would be terrified of you, but it's like the reverse. It's almost like you're Batman. They come right up to you, um, and then even adults they act like children. You'll see like these 60-year-old guys, and like their faces just light up, and they want a picture with you. Old ladies want to hug you, and it's so funny how many people want to hug me in the Darth Vader suit. Um, it's like, you do know he was the bad guy, right? He's not a he's not like a huggable dude, but you know, for some reason people just really gravitate to him. So it's funny. Um, yeah. Janelle Waz just said that she remembered the video where I was at the retro game store in costume. That was a fun day because we were there just a few days before the film came out. We were handing out flyers for people to try to get them to come to the theater. We had a good turnout. I didn't see anybody from the store that came, but we did have a really good turnout. And it was surprising because it was just a few days before Christmas and we had a big ice storm. Like, we never get snow and ice down here, hardly. Well, we get ice a lot, but we usually don't get snow. But that year, for some reason, we got like a whole bunch of snow out of nowhere, and the roads iced up, and we thought that we were possibly going to have to cancel it and postpone the whole thing. But fortunately, the roads cleared up, and we had our little premiere, and I can honestly say that was one of the most fun nights of my entire life right there, because there was nothing like seeing something you spent 3 years trying to create on a big screen. Um, so, but yeah, even the sound was cool. I was shocked actually how much I sounded like Vader in the theater because even editing the movie, I was like, you know, it's okay. The voice works like as good as I can make it. but seeing it on a theater screen with like the big subwoofers they got there, every line of dialogue I had in the movie, it's like my voice just boomed through those speakers, and it's like okay, so I actually sound pretty cool when my voice is pitched down and I have a good subwoofer helping me out. So I wish I could sound like that in real life. That would be pretty cool. So, but yeah, there was such an energy in the room, and when we played the movie, and like everyone I was hoping could be there was there. Um, but okay, good seeing you again, Janelle Waz. Have fun with your Star Trek stream, and thank you. It's a lot of fun doing this comic book stuff. Um, I really enjoy it. So you have a great night. Have fun watching Star Trek, and I'll talk to you later. So there's another comment that popped up just after hers, but it popped off again. Could you type a short comment? Okay, here we go. Cassandra Welch, little update on the puzzle. We just finished the edges. Um, yeah, that's yeah. I've gotten a bit done on this. It's pretty cool. Um, so how big is the puzzle that you're working on? How many pieces is it? It's been a long time since I put together a puzzle. I used to do that a lot with my mom when I was a kid. It's kind of relaxing. And when I was a kid, one of the other things my mom would do is late at night well, it wasn't super late at night, but it felt late at night to us because we were little. Oh, 550 pieces. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of pieces to sift through to try to find all the bits and pieces of Grogu. That sounded grosser than I meant. But yeah, don't worry, kids. Grogu wasn't blown apart. It's just a puzzle. But yeah, my mom she would turn off all the lights and light some oil lamps she had, and uh, she'd play some classical music, and we would listen to that while we were drinking some warm tea, and we just sit there and just enjoy the candle light. It was very relaxing. I might need to start doing that again every once in a while, on a stressful day. Kind of helps you wind down at the end of the night. Another thing she would do when we were kids as well is we had these like tapes of classical music, and she would play those for us during school while we were doing our art projects, and she would tell us to just kind of like draw or paint like whatever popped into our head, like whatever the music made us feel like what were we picturing, what did the music make us picture. And I can't remember the classical piece that was playing, but I do remember very vividly one time I just closed my eyes, and um, as the music was playing, I just vividly pictured a little rabbit being chased through the snow by a wolf and it trying to get away. And I must have been, I don't know, 6 years old, and I was frustrated because I couldn't make it look the way I was picturing it in my head, because I was picturing it like a Disney movie, like Bambi, and I pictured this whole scene of a little rabbit running from this wolf in the snow, and I was trying to figure out what part to paint. And for the life of me, I can't remember what piece of classical music it was that made me think of that when I was a kid, but it was some piece. It was probably some bit of Beethoven or whatever, and so he was my favorite composer when I was a little kid, I used to try to figure out his stuff on a crappy little piano. I don't know if anyone remembers. Remember those little white keyboards? They're like little cheap white keyboards that had like one row of keys on them, and they would have like the little um, only a couple voices on them. I had one of those, and I would try to figure out Beethoven stuff on it, and it frustrated me because I didn't have enough keys to play the whole tune, and so eventually I got a better keyboard when I was older, and that's when I started trying to figure out some John Williams stuff. So that's a lot of fun. His stuff is very hard to figure out because I can't read sheet music at all. I can't read sheet music or notation or anything like that. I play by ear. My nephew, he can read sheet music. He's really good on the piano. He's learning right now, and he can read sheet music and all that jazz, but I can't. I just figure it all out by ear if it sounds right to me. So all the music that was in the fan film, I composed all that stuff, and I didn't compose all of it. Um, greetings, Shrapnel. Yeah, my voice doesn't sound very cool when I don't have the helmet on. It gives me some extra bass, I guess. I'd be talking in my normal Vader voice, but it doesn't sound as cool either when I'm trying to do it without all the effects. So, because if I was trying to do it right now, I'd sound a bit more like this, and it's not exactly correct because I I don't have the pitch shifter on my voice, and I also don't have the flanger and delay and all that other wizard stuff that makes me sound better every weekend. So, also it puts a big strain on me trying to do that uh, each week. There are some times when I've had a lot of trouble getting my voice to sound right on the weekend because it's kind of like if I'm sick or just if my voice is really tired because I haven't been getting enough sleep. It's like I'll try to drop down into the register that I end up using to put all the effects on my voice, and like it just doesn't want to happen, and it doesn't sound good at all. But hold on just a moment, let me get some reference here. All right. Okay, this is what I do when I'm working on my panels. Um, as you can see right here, this is a really crappy little tiny thumbnail of this whole page right here that I'm working on, this one panel. That's the one that I'm doing right now. And this saves you a lot of time and agony because you can lay out a whole page just real rough on some crappy notebook paper with a little pilot pen. And you can get it to look basically how you want and figure out what you're going to do before you waste any good paper and all the time making a full image. And then I also use it here to do some studies. I looked up some Gothic windows, and those are what I'm going to have to draw in here. I've got like 3 of those to draw. And I'm not looking forward to it because they're very complicated and difficult to draw. But yeah, for anyone just joining, I'm not going to go for much longer. But this is hold on, I'm getting these pages shuffled around. This is what I'm working on right here. It's an original character that I about a little over a year ago. I was getting burned out doing all the lightsaber effects for the fan film Fallen Jedi, and I just took a break and just started doodling, and I just kind of made this page up as I went, and I came up with this supernatural detective guy that's like one part Dracula, one part Sherlock Holmes, and I tried to get it to look kind of like an old Universal monster movie, with all the really strong shadow, leaving it in black and white, the really gnarly, craggy trees, His name is Ravencroft, and I based his look on Vincent Price. Although, oddly enough, in my head, when I hear his dialogue, I hear Christopher Lee in my head with his voice. Or Basil Rathbone, one of the two, but usually Christopher Lee, probably because of the Dracula thing. The Chief Inspector here is based on Boris Karloff, and so these are the pages I just showed everybody at the beginning of the stream, just so they'd know kind of what it's going to look like when it's all said and done, because I don't think I can get through this whole page. I don't think I'm even going to be able to get through this one panel, because it takes a long time to ink all this stuff. But yeah, he's leading them through his castle to his study so he can question this young girl, which you can't see very well because it's all sketchy. He's going to question her about a murder she witnessed. But thank you. Shrapnel said, I like it, very noir. Yeah, I watched a whole ton of old film noir movies growing up as a kid, and old Universal monster movies. So I've always really liked the play of light and shadow in all of those films, and I like the visual style of it. And so that's what I'm trying to kind of pay a little respect to with the art style here, is to give it that old Hollywood, somewhere between a film noir movie and Universal monsters, because I really like that look. It's got kind of a cool aesthetic that I really enjoy. Gothic architecture and deep shadows. It's kind of like, I wish someone would do like a Batman film that had that kind of look, like a film noir mixed with Universal monsters. I'd even kind of like it in black and white, to be honest. I think that would fit Batman well, and I'd like to see him set back in the olden days. Because really, technology has gotten so advanced now. The idea that a guy could get around and hide from people with all the technology of today, it's kind of tricky. But a longer time ago, you really could kind of scramble around on a rooftop and get away from people and just kind of disappear. So even just the idea of Batman, I feel, works better a long time ago. But that's just me. I know a lot of people just love all the newer technology and all the new gadgets that he always has, but I always like Batman more for the mood and the atmosphere rather than the gadgets myself. I'm an old fart at heart, I think. I'm usually not super excited by technology. It kind of is like, I can take it or leave it. This I say as I'm using technology to do a live stream, so I guess I'm kind of a goober. But, I feel like technology has kind of taken over storytelling a little too much. That was one of the things I actually really loved about Godzilla Minus One, is the fact that since it was set like right after World War II, it wasn't like, oh, let's get out our cell phones and computers and we'll fix everything with the internet. So many movies use that as kind of like a quick out of a solution. And what I liked about Godzilla Minus One is the fact that like they had to figure out how to do it without that. They used technology, but like they used technology of their era, and they had to really think about it and figure it out the old-fashioned way with pencil and paper. And I like that. It was cool. So, not that I'm completely against technology. I do computer animation, so it's hard to be completely against technology when you're doing computer animation. Batman versus Cthulhu would be a great read. You know, I've never actually read any of the Cthulhu stories, but I've heard they're very interesting. Like I've heard there's like a whole like weird, creepy mythology that goes along with it. And since Batman stories typically have kind of a spooky edge, um, I think it would be kind of interesting. So I know at least I think they made like a Batman versus Predator comic a while back, and that was kind of an odd pairing, I thought. But I guess he teams up with Superman, and Superman's an alien, so hey, what do I know, right? But I guess I like Batman fighting his own varied bunch of nutcases from Gotham City. That's my favorite stuff with Batman. But I know that there was a cartoon called The Batman from the early 2000s, and they made a Halloween special where it was like Batman versus Dracula, and I never saw it, but I heard it was like a really cool matchup, and it sounds like it would be cool because like you got a guy that you know his whole thing is trying to scare people, and he dresses like a bat, and then you got a dude that like he really can turn into a bat. It's like that. That's a great idea for a matchup, I think. So I don't think we're gonna go too much longer here because it's been going for about an hour and 11 minutes. So I'll wrap this up in a little bit here. I'm just gonna get a bit more done on these windows. So I wish I could have gotten more of this page finished for you guys, but if I drew any faster, I think it would start looking really crappy. Because there are already some things that I'm not happy with on this page because I kind of sped through it. But like I said, sometimes it's good to just get something done. Oh, thank you, Adelphin Sound. She said it looks great, and I appreciate that. Um, I I always have a problem when I'm drawing. I have a big problem with drawing like mechanically perfect, um, straight stuff, like really detailed architecture and weapons and all that kind of stuff. Um, it's been a big detriment for me trying to draw because like my interests are, I like medieval stuff. I like sci-fi. Um, but yeah, it's like to draw all that, you got to do so much research, and you got to try to be so precise with all your lines. It's very difficult. Um, so you know what? I'm gonna leave those windows for now, and I'll do them off screen where I can take the time with him. I'll do a little bit of her face um, before we go. Let me drop this down a little bit. I hope this doesn't make a terrible noise. There we go. Sorry if that made a big squeaking sound. I don't know if it made a weird noise on there, but I'm gonna ink her real quick. Um, well, I better do a bit of him first because he kind of overlaps her a bit. So that's something to keep in mind with your compositions to make sure they're interesting is um, go ahead and have characters overlap each other like this. You see how he's gonna have a lot of shadow along this side of his head, um, and he's gonna be this very dark frame that almost it'll draw your eye to her because um, he sets up almost kind of a frame for her. Um, so that's something to keep in mind if you're going to be drawing is to put elements in your drawings that will kind of frame your characters and draw the viewer's eye to where you want them to look. whether it's a part of the background or a character. So here we go. Sorry if I don't talk much here. I'm doing little fine details on the faces. I have to concentrate a bit more so I don't mess it up. There you go. Okay, so as you can see with her, she's very inspired by 1960s era comic book art. She's basically, I mean, I'll be honest, she's basically like 1960s era Gwen Stacy, John Romita Sr. That's basically who she is. Not personality-wise or character-wise, but like in terms of like visually, that's what I wanted her to look like. Because I thought she would play well off of this kind of spooky detective guy if she felt very innocent and sweet. And since it's kind of like, this book is set in the past, it's not like a modern day thing, so I thought, well, you know, if it's going to be set in the past anyway, and I want her to seem really sweet and nice, I might as well kind of tip my hat to classic John Romita Spider-Man art, because he's another one of my big influences. John Buscema is my main comic book influence because I watched the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way video like a million times. It's actually here on YouTube. Someone uploaded the whole thing. So, like, if you want to watch what I watched to learn how to draw, just look up How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way with Stan Lee and John Buscema, and you can see them in all their corny glory, because John Buscema draws great, but, you know, sometimes when he's talking, he sounds kind of funny. You can tell he's not used to kind of being on camera, because he's sitting there trying to talk about stuff, and he's like there's this one part that always was funny to me, because I always thought he almost sounded like a Looney Tunes character, because he's talking about how it's like, it's fun to change the rules to be creative, but you have to master the rules first. You know, he just has that funny New York accent, and you know, Stan Lee's his usual entertainingly corny self, and I love it. It's just fun to watch. Every once in a while, if I'm working on a new art project, or even if I'm feeling a little down, every once in a while, I'll look that video back up, because it brings back a lot of warm memories for me of when I was a kid, watching that video over and over and over again, because I had it on videotape, and I loaned it to someone, and they thought I was giving it to them, and I didn't have the nerve to say, like, no, I wasn't giving that to you, I want it back, you know. I felt like I couldn't do that. I felt like it would be rude, because they were so excited and happy, because they thought I was giving it to them, and so that's how I lost my videotape. I'd still have it to this day, and I'd probably even pop it in on my VCR, because we still have one that works. We still have, like, all of our old stuff. We have our old VCR that still works. We have, like, all of our own old gaming consoles. They still work, because we were very careful with our stuff growing up. Because we were like, hey, you know, Mom and Dad spent good money on that. You gotta love it a little. You gotta baby it, you know. So right here, what I'm doing, these lines, that's the edge of the shadow on his face. So, and here I'm just kind of... This is the tricky part when you're doing hair, is to kind of decide which lines stay and which lines go. Because sometimes when you're building a hairdo, you're building out the volumes of the hair, and it looks nice and detailed, but at the same time it's all sketchy because you haven't like completely committed to any one line yet. And then when it gets down to like, okay, you got the basics down, but like, what's the hair really gonna look like? Then you have to choose what lines to keep and what lines to get rid of, and you can end up with a mess if you're not careful. So, which I kind of ended up with a little bit of a mess, and that's why I blacked it all out. Because something I learned watching a video with Stan Lee and Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn, and he used to draw Spider-Man. He always says that, like, you know, his mantra is like, when in doubt, black it out. If something doesn't look right, you just paint it black, and then no one sees that you messed up. So, wise words to live by if you're an aspiring comic book artist. Or I should imagine it would work if you're a painter as well. But yeah, it's a nice, easy way to fix a problem with your art. Doesn't work for everything, because, like, you know, if I'd messed up on her face, that's why I stopped talking there, so I could concentrate more. If I'd messed up on her face, I'd just be out of luck. I'd have to... back in the day, I would have had to just scrap the whole page and start over, but now with computers, I guess, I could add in a new version of the panel. Hello, Eternal Darth Rex, I believe your name is. Good to see you, my friend. What type of markers and pens am I using? I don't know how to say the name, because I think it's a foreign brand. But from what I can tell, it would be said like Mogyan or something like that. It's a 12 brush pack that I got on Amazon. My mom and dad actually got these for me for Christmas this year, because all of my old pens were dried up. And the great thing about them is they're like a double tip. The one side you use for line art, and then the same pen on the other side, it's a really nice brush, and that's what I'm using to do all the heavy dark shadow areas. And these are wonderful pens. Usually I get some art pens at Hobby Lobby or something like that, and I'd have to try to find brushes and like the .5 tip drawing pen, and usually it was very hard to find the drawing tip that was small enough for how I like to draw. Um, but the nice thing about these brushes is it's the two exact pens that I always buy and use the most in one. So these come in really handy for comic art. And they come in handy for doing comic strip work as well, because I had a little comic strip that I was working on a couple years back. It's a cute little fantasy strip. And if you'll bear with me for a moment while I step away here so I can grab it. Hold on just one moment. I'll be right back in a second. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. This is a little comic strip that I was working on. Let me change this. Lift it up just a little bit so you can see it a little easier. It's called To and Fro, and it's just a fun little, almost like a newspaper comic strip. I was trying to give it kind of the feel of Calvin and Hobbes, and it's about this little adventurer guy named Baldric, and he wants to go on big adventures, but he's too little. And he goes to the big questing guild hall and asks if there are any cool quests. And then this big guy named Haldir, he tells him like, "Nope, nothing for you. Like you're too little." Then he meets the old wizard Gando, and obviously you know who he's supposed to be. He's kind of a parody version of Gandalf, um, right down to his goofy name. And he's like, "Hey, I know a job you can take." And here's another page that I did where he's facing off against a dragon. There's, excuse me, there's a princess up in this tower, and he's gonna try to rescue the princess from this evil dragon guy. And um, I had a whole story I was planning with this, and I was doing that back in 2002. But then I got really bogged down working on the fan film, and I never did any more of it. So now that I got these new pens, I might get back to doing a little bit of that little comic strip, because it's kind of fun. It's just a very cute story, very innocent, and but it's still set in a fun fantasy world. So just inking the dialogue real quick. Now, when I get this on the computer, I change all my dialogue. I don't change it. It all still says everything that I put here, but I type it up so it looks better, so you can read it nicer, and also so I can fix any spelling mistakes, because I'm dyslexic and I'm terrible at spelling. I mess up all the time when I'm spelling stuff. So when I get it on the computer, then I can run it through a spell check and make sure I'm not looking like a goober because I have everything spelled wrong. So, but yeah, so here you go. Um, that's what we're looking like so far. Um, I don't know. Do you guys want me to go any further on it, or do you guys want me to call it a night? Because I can stick around and draw another panel if you want. Um, if you want me to keep going, or we can call it a night right here, and we'll come back to this sometime later. Keep going? Okay. Alright, well, I'll keep it going for a little bit longer. Let me get this dialogue in, because I gotta get... sorry, I know this is really boring, because you're probably just mainly seeing my hand, but I gotta get this dialogue balloon in before I can start drawing him, because I need to make sure he doesn't overlap everything. Oh, you're welcome for telling you about the pens. They're really good if you like to draw. I highly recommend these. I don't usually recommend any kind of product or anything on here because I don't want to waste anybody's money, but these are very, very good pens. I love them. I think these are my favorite drawing pens I've ever drawn with, honestly. So, but here we go. But yeah, this is I need to get back and finish this because there's a whole story going on here where basically there was a murder that took place that has the cops all like totally confused. They don't know who did it or how. Let me drop this down again. Sorry. That way you can maybe see what I'm doing a little better if the camera's down closer to it, because I know this pencil is very, very light. I always do very light pencil work. Can you see that a little bit better? There we go. But yeah, anyway. Oh, you said, what did I say? You lost a connection for a few minutes? I was just dropping the view down so you could see it a bit better because I draw so light with my sketching. Okay, good, good. I'm glad you guys can see it better. As for the story, basically what's going on in this is there was a murder that has all the police totally confused. They don't know who did it or why. They can't figure it out. Um, and she's the only one who saw what happened. It was late at night. She saw what happened, and the police assumed she was hysterical because she said she saw a monster hovering over the body of the poor unfortunate man who met a grim demise. Um, so the police just assumed that she was hysterical because she found a body and all that. But this guy who knows about monsters and the dark creatures and mysteries of the world, um, he's kind of like, you guys didn't even bother to question her any further about this. So he asks them to. He tells the chief inspector to bring her to his castle, Ravencroft Manor, so according to him, so she can be questioned properly. Because he believes her, because he knows a thing or two about monsters, which what he knows about monsters is explained later in the story. So they bring her to his house, and this is just after he's first opened the door, and she's meeting him for the first time. So I wanted it to feel almost like a spooky meeting, almost kind of like, almost like Dracula opened the door to his house to invite you in. Which that's why in this other panel here, hold on, bear with me for just a moment. That's why in this panel right here, I've got this shot of, oh, all my paper fell. I got this shot right here of him with his candelabra being all spooky. I dropped my papers. Okay, there we go. But yeah, so to give him just kind of like that monster movie feel. So let me get back to drawing his face. So I do apologize for rambling so much while I'm doing these videos. I watched my live stream back that I did last week on Wednesday about the animation, and I was like, oh boy, like every time I go, so I'm trying to get better at, I just did it. I was going to say, I'm trying to get better at not doing it, and then I just went, when I was in the middle of saying it, so. But, oh well. It's kind of a placeholder phrase, I guess, that kind of is an old habit of trying to collect what I'm saying while I'm in the middle of talking. Come to think of it, looking at this guy, how I draw him, he's a bit, there are certain features that he has that are a bit like Captain Kane, the guy that I was animating last weekend. Not weekend, but last Wednesday. I just noticed that right now. He's got kind of a long nose, the big thick eyebrows, the same goatee and everything. That might be why Captain Kane was making me think of somebody when I drew him last week. I might have been thinking of my own character. But yeah, this guy right here, he's meant to be, I guess, spooky and almost like charmingly sinister, I guess is the way you could put it. To where it's like you're not quite sure what his deal is, when you're first reading the book. Which I guess I'm spoiling all that for you guys by telling you little bits about it here, but hopefully people will enjoy it, though, because he's a very fun character to draw, and it's a fun little world to work in with all the monsters and all that kind of thing. Now, every project we do is not going to be about monsters. It's just ironically the ones I happen to be kind of getting progress on at the moment all happen to have something to do with monsters, because me and my buddy who played the Jedi in our fan film, we're working on a short film, and it's completely unrelated to this in any way, but it does have to do with a monster hunter. I don't know, if I make this book and it gets popular where people like Ravencroft and they want to see more stories, I may tie it into our monster hunter character. Maybe have someone from his order show up. Because the monster hunter movie we're doing is about a monster hunting priest. Shrapnel, what are your thoughts on the Rippaverse? And also, was that Dean Cain doing a comic? I don't know a whole lot about the Rippaverse stuff. I think if people want to make their own independent comics, I think that's cool. But I don't know a lot about that whole situation going on with him. I know a lot of people don't like him for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know anything about him really. Let me see, what was that? Speaking of monsters, have you heard of Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting? I haven't. I've never heard of that, but I'll look it up. I don't really. I'm incredibly behind on like everything people find out about. Like even when I try to do reaction videos of like the latest trailers, since I have to go somewhere every weekend to be able to have a good enough internet connection to post my videos, I'm always like just about a week behind on anything. So I don't know much about it. Yeah, Adelphin Sound, you were saying that he makes you think of Vincent Price. Well, that's good, because he was who I based this guy's look on. I was trying to figure out what Ravencroft should look like. I knew I wanted him to have a certain vibe, and once I got down to a page where I knew I was going to have to show his face really clearly, because in those first few panels, he's in the first few panels I drew him in, his face was in like total shadow, or at least halfway obscured with shadow. But I thought, like, well, I can't like not show this guy's face through the whole book. I'm gonna have to show him at some point, so I better design him in a hurry. Because those first few pages were just drawn for fun, just to kind of get my mind off of lightsabers and special effects, because I was getting so burnt out working on the fan film, like 10 hours a day. So, because I would sit there, like, in some cases for, 8-10 hours at a stretch doing all the lightsaber effects, because you have to go frame by frame putting those blades over the sabers that we were fighting with when we would go on location. So when you get a whole bit of fight choreography done, it's cool, but then I always know, like, I'm going to have to put lightsabers over all that, and it takes forever. So that's why I started just kind of doodling around and sketching this stuff. And I drew them in all the deep shadow because I had no idea what I was doing. I just kind of started drawing a guy in a cape and just kind of let the page kind of become what it was going to become. I didn't have a plan for a story. Because when I was a teenager, that's how I used to do comics. I would just sit there until an image popped in my head. I wouldn't have a big idea for a story I was planning out. I would just sit there until an image started popping into my head, and then really just because I didn't want to draw backgrounds, I would just fill my panels with dialogue balloons. So Adelphin-san just asked, "Am I gonna publish this?" I probably will when I'm done with it. I might publish it on Amazon. I don't know if people would want it as an ebook or a physical copy. It probably won't be really long, so I was trying to figure out if I needed to come up with some other little stories that I could make sort of like a kind of a box set thing where they could get not only this but some other story along with it. I don't know, because I don't know how long of a story this is going to really be. So I'll kind of take that as it comes. Like I'll figure it out as I go. I still need to finish this panel right here. I haven't even done this one yet, like in pencil. But I was gonna do that originally today. I was gonna sketch this other panel, but I figured with how light I draw, it probably wouldn't even show up on camera. So I thought maybe I should do my inking instead. So here we got like a super classic. We got like a super classic style, old school monster movie Scream panel. And those are always kind of goofy to draw. But yeah, the Eternal Death Rex, is that the name? I think said that he preferred, or she preferred physical copies. I always prefer physical comics myself too. I prefer physical copy of everything, whether it's a movie, video game, comics, whatever. Um, I like to have something I can have in my hand that's totally mine, because I don't like the idea of a studio being able to decide, like, well, not enough people are watching this or not enough people are reading it, and just say Rex. It's easier. Okay, yeah, I'll just say Rex from now on. But yeah, I don't like how studios will kind of decide not enough people are watching or reading something, so they'll just kind of take it off of their library, even if you bought it. Um, oh, Sonic the Hedgehog comics. Someone said the comic they had was a Sonic the Hedgehog comic. I had a couple of those back when I was younger. Someone gave them to me, and there's a lot of lore that went into those. Um, Jacob Stauffer said he's all for physical copies, especially CDs. Me too, because I don't know. I guess maybe it's what was that? Something fell down. Oh, my cat knocked down my ruler. That's what that was. If you heard that clanking. Um, but yeah, with music, I like physical copies as well. Just everything, because maybe it was when I grew up too. But like, I even like I don't know. I like putting something in a machine and knowing I decided to watch it or decided to listen to it. Um, I know that probably makes me sound like such an old fogey, but it just, I don't know. There's something about getting up, looking through a collection of DVDs or whatever, and kind of standing there and deciding, like, you know what, this is what I'm going to spend the next hour and a half, 2 hours watching. Because I find a lot of times when I'm scrolling through streaming platforms, it's just kind of like, I don't know about that. I don't know about. Maybe I'll come back to that one in a minute, but I'll just keep going. I'll see what they've got. It seems like they're kind of engineered to kind of keep you scrolling through it rather than watching anything. So for me, I always just kind of I like to watch things on physical copy. So, but yeah, the I remember going to the video store when I was a kid. So that's also kind of a fond memory for me that I miss. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm subconsciously trying to relive going to the video store. Because when I was younger, they even had video stores in grocery stores. There was one in a little grocery store that we went to, and they had this little video store, and I remember very vividly they were holding an art competition. It was like open to anyone like 6 and up, I think it was. And so I drew Woody from Toy Story off of I had like a little notebook for all my schoolwork, and it had Woody on it. So I drew Woody off of that, and I won. I didn't usually win things, and I was so excited because I won this art competition, and you won like 10 free rentals or something like that, and it was really really a cool feeling. The only problem was there wasn't that much that was good to watch that they had. They didn't have a very good selection of videotapes, but we rented like the same 2 episodes of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles over and over again. And I believe, yeah, that's where, come to think of it, that's where I saw Pebble and the Penguin for the first time. It's an old movie with Martin Short. He voices a penguin named Hubie. And it's just a little sappy love story cartoon, but it's cute. Rented that a couple times. I think I even rented one of the Land Before Time sequels, and I was disappointed with it because it was pretty cheesy. I think it may have been the one with the little purple T-Rex or something. I don't remember for sure. I didn't enjoy it. That was also one of the first times I started feeling like that was one of the first times I started feeling like I was growing up. I remember that distinctly because I was like, I feel like I'm too old to be watching this. This is dumb. This isn't as good as I hoped it would be. But yeah, it was fun renting all that stuff, and I let my brothers pick some stuff they wanted to rent as well, because that's how we were. We growing up, we kind of like, I don't know. I always got along with my brothers and sister. I always hear about everyone else talking about how much they, fought with their brothers and hated them and were always angry and mad. My brothers were like, they were my best friends, and so me, when I won that little competition, I didn't have a feeling of like, well, these are my rentals because I won the competition, so I'm gonna just pick. It's like I knew they wanted to see some stuff too, so I just kind of I let them pick some stuff they wanted to watch, and I basically gave everybody a couple of my rentals in my family to be like, well, why don't you pick something? So, but yeah, let me see here. I don't know what got me off on that whole rant about rentals and all that, but yeah, there's a secret glimpse into the childhood of Darth Vader. Bet you never knew Darth Vader won a drawing contest by drawing Woody and rented videotapes. The secrets are revealed. So anyway, right here, what I'm doing here, if you're wondering, it might seem like, well, why are you blacking in that area around her head? Sometimes when you have a close-up on a character where their hair and everything goes like right up to the borders of the panel, every once in a while, it's a good idea to put in these little areas of shadow around them to kind of make the character pop out from the panel a little bit to where you can tell what's her and what's the background, so it doesn't get confusing. And so it's just a way to kind of again, draw your eye to her, because her being kind of scared is sort of the focal point of this panel. And drawing is always a process, because I don't know if you noticed, but like I had penciled in her hand right here, coming up in front of her face, like old school movies. When girls would act panicky, they'd always bring their hand up to their face like that. But I didn't really like how it looked, so all I did was just, when I'm inking it, I just got rid of it. And now when I erase the pencil lines, probably in a few years I'll forget that her hand was even up there. So here we go. This might be as far as we can go with this, because this other panel up at the top is pretty complicated. This one right here. And I don't know if it'll show up when I'm doing too well, because there's a lot of really tiny fine detail, and my hand will probably cover up that whole panel, so because it's so tiny. And I really don't want to draw these windows right now because I'm feeling lazy. I'm also feeling a little bit shaky. I've got kind of a weird angle here with this tripod, and it's kind of keeping me from drawing the way I usually do, so it's making me feel a little bit unsteady with some of my lines. But thank you for the compliment on the page, though. I'm glad you're enjoying how it's looking. But yeah, we've been going for about 2 hours now, so I think once I get a couple more details in here on her hair, we'll call it a night, because there's not much more I can do, and I do appreciate all you guys hanging out with me for so long here, because I know you all got busy lives, and you could be anywhere else, but you're hanging out here with me, so I appreciate that. So, and again, like I said, if I've missed your comments in the chat, I hope you don't think I'm ignoring you, because I'm not. It's just, I really got to concentrate when I'm drawing, and the comments, they pop up and leave so quick here on my tablet, because I'm doing this from a little tablet thing here. I'm not doing this from a computer. I've got a tablet, so it kind of pops up and comes down real quick. So, yeah, Deathrex just said that, like, the hairstyle makes you think of the old Spider-Man comics. She was drawn basically to look like Gwen Stacy from the 60s comics. That's totally what I was going for with her. So that was a good eye. Because I wanted to make her look like she was from the 60s. So you can see, yeah, she has the total old school 1960s Marvel comic book kind of vibe to her. Let me bring my tripod back up here just before we leave, so I can kind of pan out and let you see some of this stuff a little bit better. Because I know I've shown you these pages before, but now you can kind of get a look at the page more how I'm seeing it, with like almost the whole thing. So here you go. So here, it's him from the back kind of inviting them into his house, and all three of them are by the front door. You can't really see it because it's so fadey. I still got to do the windows, and I've got to draw a panel here of them walking through the halls, because he's leading them into his study, and they're just turning a corner, and that's what she sees around that corner is what's making her gasp. And you'll just have to wait until I draw more of it to see what she's scared about. So, because unlike my old stuff, I actually do have a plan of what she's nervous about. It's nothing huge, like a monster or anything. It's just she's scared of something in his house, because he has a big spooky manor house. But yeah, so as you can see, drawing with comic book stuff, you can do it like several ways. You can do this more realistic, old school 1960s comic book style, like this, which is a lot of fun. Cassandra Welch was saying that, like, he's very similar to Dracula. I was drawing him to have that kind of vibe on purpose. He isn't actually Dracula, but I did want him to have that spooky vibe. So, But yeah, so like you can draw like that or draw silly little cartoony stuff like this too. That's what these pens are good for, because they can do both. And so I've got a lot of drawing projects that I'm working on the side, while I'm also working on film projects. And Adela Finsan said he made you think of the Dracula from the old Hammer films. You know, I haven't actually seen the Hammer horror films, but I have seen images of Christopher Lee as Dracula from those movies, and I think I think that was in the back of my head, especially when I drew this one, because before his face kind of elongated and I made him more Vincent Price like, he looks a lot more like Christopher Lee right here to me. So I think that was what was in the back of my head when I was drawing him, because here and there I was like, that could be like a Christopher Lee Dracula really easily. But then I kind of morphed him and turned him into my own guy afterwards. And here he just kind of looks cool. He looks very comic booky with his cape flaring out. So, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with how all this is going so far. And I'm going to keep working on these pages. Next week on Wednesday, these live streams are going to be kind of a regular thing now. I'm going to keep doing the Vader stuff on the weekends, but these live streams are just a way that I can kind of talk to you guys and just have a little fun doing stuff like this. And maybe next week I might do some more drawing, or I might do a gameplay video or something. I don't know, because I'm thinking about plugging in my old Sega Genesis and playing a game that was like my favorite game when I was a kid. So I don't know if that sounds interesting to any of you guys, but we'll just see. We'll see what I end up doing next week. So anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with me for a little while. If you are interested in learning how to draw comics yourself, again, you could look up the video because it's right here on YouTube, or you could look for this on Amazon. It's the book version of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema. It has all the same information that the video has. There are lessons on how to do foreshortening and how to build your characters up with basic shapes. Lessons on inking and perspective. As you can see, they draw much better than I do. But yeah, this is the basis of where my inspiration comes from when I'm drawing comic book art, is John Buscema, because he had so much talent, and he's very, very impressive with his artwork, very inspirational. There's so much character to it, and so much life to it, and that's what I've always tried to capture when I was doing comic book art myself. So, highly recommend this book. If you don't have the money to buy the book, feel free to cheat and watch the watch the video here on YouTube, because somebody posted the whole thing. So, wasn't me, but if you want to look it up, it's right there. And another thing, if you're a big fan of black and white comic books, I got this a couple years back for my birthday. These were also on Amazon, if I remember right. It's either Amazon or my brother got them for me on eBay. Let me zoom my camera out a bit here. Just a little bit more. Bear with me, please. Here we go. Trying to keep my dirty floor out of the shot. I don't know if I'm doing too well with that. But yeah, Zorro Comics. They're Alex Toth. He's the guy who did Space Ghost. He did a lot of really great comic book work. They're based on the old Zorro TV series, and that was my favorite show when I was a kid. I loved Zorro before I even loved Star Wars, and each episode had a great sword fight in it. You can see where my love of black capes and gloves came from. So, but they're also pretty cool swashbuckling adventures. So, my brother got me both of those for Christmas a couple years back. and they're a pretty cool resource if you want to see some black and white comic art. Because sometimes when the colors are put in, you can't notice the line work and the shadow, and sometimes the compositions become kind of muddied. Sorry about that. I don't know if you can hear that scratching. My cat, she loves to get in boxes and just sharpen her claws, so she's doing that right now because she's mad at me because I've got my tripod and this thing set up where she usually tries to sleep. So she's kind of huffy at me all night because all my drawing stuff's in the way on her favorite cushion where she likes to sleep. So, but yeah, that's the whole thing. So, I guess I will see you guys on the weekend with my video. I'm trying to figure out what to do for this week. It's kind of a slow news week. Maybe I can talk about the whole Mando movie. But I don't know if anyone's going to care enough about that by the time it gets to the weekend. Plus, there's not a whole lot to talk about yet because there's not much news. So as Newt Gunray would say, it's like, no need to report on that until there's something to report, you know? So I don't know. But I hope you guys enjoyed this little look at drawing. It was really fun talking to you guys. Pleasure talking to you too, Death Rex. Good having you in the live chat. And thank you guys for showing up and talking with me. It was a lot of fun. Glad you liked my Newt Gunray impression. I don't typically get to do goofy voices like that in my reviews because I'm trying to maintain the Darth Vader voice. Or at least my silly version of it. It's not an exact Vader, obviously. But yeah, I will see you guys next weekend and as Vader. And then I will see you guys again on Wednesday for another stream. So let me get this out of my thing right here. All right. So thank you guys again for showing up, and I will talk to you guys later. So you have a wonderful evening. God bless you guys, and stay safe out there.